but they took you into the room. You signed all the paperwork, new NDAs, all sorts of stuff. And then you basically got like your jersey. And then you went back to your hotel room and then waited until they called you down like the morning of to come down in your jersey. And poor planning on their part. We could have just worn like our normal civilian clothing, but they put us all in trash bags. I guess like that was a last minute decision, which didn't help because then people were like, why are there 1,000 people in a hotel in trash bags? That like raised some controversy right there. The trash bags were hot. You know, you could just rip bigger armholes or like suck it up. Yeah, that wasn't like a good decision on anyone's part. I don't know who that was, but it probably wasn't Mr. Beast directly.
And then, so you were put in trash bags, and then what happened once you were put into trash bags?
Once we were put into trash bags, well, they fed us breakfast. You had the opportunity to go get your own breakfast before the trash situation. Then it was like 3 or 4 hours of waiting until we got to the Rio Hotel. And they put us in the big grand rooms with, say, like 500 people in each room. Okay. And they would sporadically bring out food. They offered water. You could go to the bathroom. And yeah, so like we stood in those halls for another like 6 hours until we finally were bused to Allegiant Stadium, where we spent another 2 hours sitting on the bus and then going in through the in-dock process where they explain where the exits are, the safety of the stadium, like where we're going to be. But we were all just split up into 4 groups between the 2,000 people. And like,
okay, wait. So you guys were put into trash bags and you just waited around in a hotel like conference room for 6 hours?
We put on the trash bags. We waited for like 2 hours to go on a bus to go to the Rio. And then once we were at the Rio, we were in the big grand halls where we had trash bags on. We probably waited for another hour in the trash bags before they said, oh, you guys can take them off, but keep your trash bags so that you have it like when we walk out of here to the buses to go to Allegiant Stadium again.
Okay. And then what were you guys doing at the Rio in trash bags?
So at the Rio in trash bags, they collected our phones once we got on the buses. And then when we were in the Rio, we were just sitting at tables. I think some of the halls actually didn't have tables. We just sat around for 6 hours. And like, I had a great group of friends that I was able to play games with and stuff at our table. We had like 7 or 8 people at our table, getting to know people. The coolest thing about the whole experience is getting adults together and taking away all distractions so they have nothing to do but get to know each other. That was the coolest thing. So
you guys waited around there for 6 hours, and then they bussed you to where the event happened?
Yeah, so everything took place in Allegiant Stadium throughout those 4 days.
And what was the Allegiant? I'm not familiar. Is that just the Las Vegas Stadium?
Yeah, so it's like the nicest, biggest, newest football stadium that exists. Everything's super high tech. It was actually really cool. Like the stadium was super sick. I think we got some like behind the scenes looks that not a lot of people do. But yeah, like the only place in Las Vegas that can accommodate any sort of thing like that is Allegiant Stadium.
Okay, so take me like through the whole thing so you got onto the bus from Rio, you went to the stadium, and what happened then when you got off?
When we got off the stadium, we walked inside and there were people waiting by TV screens. There was the main producer. There were a couple of the Mr. Beast team waiting around. And after everyone had filed in, after like another 30 minutes to an hour, all of this was just like waiting around, which like is totally fine as long as you can handle waiting around. That's a big issue people had. But like if you have 2,000 people, your production's not going to move very quickly from thing to thing. So they basically just told us where the exits were. They had on TV screens displaying like, the safety precautions of the stadium if something were to happen, who to call, who you're going to contact, like whatever. And then shortly after that,
all they do when they do this, when the Democrats do this, by the way, is normalize right-wing sentiment. If you don't address some of the insane lies that Donald Trump is telling a mile a fucking minute, all you have done in that process is normalize these lies. And you have people on your side of the political spectrum believe it. Wonderful stuff. Oh, Trump is coming in. Fast forward into the future.
Thank you very much, everybody. We have been living through the worst border crisis in the history of the world. There's never been anything like it, which has brought untold suffering, misery, and death upon our land. The architect of this destruction is Kamala When you look at the 4 years that have taken place
Kamala.
after being named border czar, Kamala Harris will be visiting the southern border that she has completely destroyed, from what I understand, tomorrow. Why would she go to the border now, playing right into the hand of her opponent? I mean, you take a look at this. Why would you do that? There can be no justification for what she's done. There's nobody saying, oh, gee, she's done a fabulous job. She's done the worst job probably in the history of any border, not just our border. She keeps talking about how she supposedly wants to fix the border. We would merely ask, why didn't she do it 4 years ago? It's a very simple question. I can say this with everything she has. She talks about borders and taxes and all these different things. Her policies on tax, by the way, are terrible, but I can say it for everything. Why didn't she fix it almost 4 years ago? She's got no plans, got no talent, got no ability to do it. I'm here today to present you with the facts and only the facts about how
Boring. Talk about
Comrade
Eric.
Kamala Harris
Talk about Eric
willfully
Adams.
threw open our border, helping to virtually destroy our country. Our country's never been under
He's more winded than Sam Sulek doing bicep curls, bro. What the?
secure border in U.S. history,
Boo.
with the lowest illegal immigration on record. You know the chart. I love that chart. I love that chart. I probably wouldn't be here right now except for that chart. Those who at our borders were captured, detained, and quickly sent back home under the Trump administration. But on her first day in office, Kamala Harris terminated every single Trump policy that sealed and secured the border. She ordered an immediate stop to the completion of the border wall. It was almost complete. We built hundreds and hundreds of miles of wall, and it worked. I always said walls and wheels. Everything else is obsolete, but walls and wheels, and this wall worked. And we were ready to build and throw up another 200. Could have been done within weeks. Everything was complete. The wall was all built, ready to go, laying there, ready to be fixed.
Laying there.
All they had to do is throw it up, and you would have had an extra 200 miles of wall, far more than I promised in the election. She suspended all deportations. She instituted catch and release across the entire southern border. And we had catch and release also, but we released in Mexico. Her catch and release was to release in the United States and never see them again. She sent Congress a bill demanding amnesty for all illegal aliens, every single illegal alien, even if they're drug dealers, human traffickers. She wanted amnesty for everybody. Radical left. This is a radical left person. She terminated Remain in Mexico, something that took me and a lot of talent, a lot of other people, but it took a lot of talent to get from the president of Mexico, a good man, but we got it. You had to remain in Mexico. You couldn't come in under any circumstance. You weren't allowed into the United States until we checked it out, and many people did not come in and were not allowed to come in because they didn't check out. They were drug dealers. They were gang members. They were in jail for in a couple of cases. We wouldn't let them in, and she canceled every Safe Third agreement. Anybody here, I think, would know what that is, but that was a horrible thing that she did. And she canceled Remain in Mexico. Here we have something, Remain in Mexico. You don't have to explain it. She canceled. She ordered ICE to halt the removal of virtually all aliens, including MS-13 gang members, the worst gang anywhere in the world, they say. Evil, evil gang. She ended all of our programs that we instituted to stop child and woman trafficking. The trafficking is at a level now that it's never been before. I had it down to the lowest level it's been in 32 years because we had such a strong border. They couldn't get through, but now it's the worst it's been in 32 years plus. And then she lost, and this is probably the worst statistic of them all, 325,000 children. Think of that. 3.5 years. She lost 325,000 children, and they're either dead, being sold into sex slavery, or just plain missing? Think of the number, 325,000. If that were a Republican instead of her, and she was the border czar, she says, well, I wasn't the border czar, she was. And tomorrow she'll make a case that, oh, she did a fairly good job. You can't say much. You can't justify it. She should save her airfare. She should go back to the White House and tell the president to close the border. He can do it with the signing of just a signature on a piece of paper to the Border Patrol. Instead, she's going there to try and convince people that she wasn't as bad as everybody knows she was. She was the worst in history. Grossly incompetent, weak.
Why does Trump think that, like, signing stuff is so cool? How powerful I am. I signed this. Job. You can.
And ineffective. And all you have to do is ask Brandon Judd, Border Patrol. You could ask any of them. Tom Homan. We had the best people that we've ever had, and they said Trump was the best president on the border ever. She ripped up every single reform that we put in place to stop asylum fraud. She ended a travel ban that was unbelievably successful. We had the strongest travel ban anywhere in the world, and it was upheld by the United States Supreme Court. She canceled Title 42. That was a medical title. She canceled it, very hard to get. And altogether, she took 93 executive orders that I put on, all which made the border the best border we've ever had in recorded history. And she terminated them along with Joe Biden, the worst administration in the history of our country. And on the border, it's not even close. Because of these acts, in less than 4 years, 21 million illegal aliens at least. That's the real number. You don't hear that. You hear 15, 16. Sometimes you hear 17. The number is at least 21 million. And on top of that, you have gotaways. That's gotaways. That's people that came over or got away. And they've stormed across our border like nobody in history on any border anywhere in the world. There's never been any border in history where you had millions of people storming us like that. No third world country would allow it. But she allowed it because she's incompetent. She allowed it because she never went there. She says she went once, but it was not the right location. It was a location that was very mild and no danger. She never went there. She's going there tomorrow after almost 4 years. She's going there tomorrow to try and show you what a great job she did. But even now, the numbers are terrible. And remember, they're flying people over, and they haven't stopped that. They're flying hundreds of thousands of people over the border right now. They never stopped that. They didn't think they'd be caught, but they were 2 weeks ago. From prisons and jails, mental institutions, and insane asylum, all these insane asylums where you have the sickest people, mentally ill people, and terrorists at record levels. We've never had terrorists come into our country like this. They come, and they keep coming and coming, and nobody has ever seen anything like it. People that go to the border, they look professionals, and they said there's never been anything like this in the history of the world, and they are destroying the fabric of our country. She did nothing to stop any of it. In fact, she encouraged them to keep coming, and you know that. For years she did. Only recently did she say, oh, well, we're going to try and put a stop to it.
She literally flew to Guatemala as like her first part of her vice presidential border czar duties and told them famously, do not come.
Including unrelated elements to what we're talking about now, like taxes, like military, like so many other things. Why didn't she do it? She's got plans for the future. Why didn't she do it? She's been there almost 4 years. Kamala created a brand new program to fly in migrants from Venezuela, Haiti, and Nicaragua and resettle them in American communities, including small towns all across our nation, but in particular in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, and North Carolina. Nobody can believe it. These towns have been destroyed, and the mayors of the towns and the governors of the states can't talk about it because they're embarrassed that they allowed it to happen. In addition, through her phone app, something totally new now. It's a phone app for migrants, where migrants call in, highly sophisticated migrants. She's allowed virtually unlimited numbers of illegals
Highly sophisticated
to press
migrants.
a button, schedule their illegal
sophisticated
immigration
migrants.
appointment at our ports of entry, and show up to be released into the interior of our country. Can anybody believe this? And they're invading our towns. It's an invasion of our country like no country has ever had to suffer before. And this was
He's talking about the
purposeful.
streamlined application that doesn't even
Purpose
work
is not-
appropriately.
a mistake on their part. They did this on purpose because their policies are so wrong and so evil and so unfair. And there's only 3 reasons they want to do that. Number one, they're incompetent, and I'm not sure that that's the reason. Number 2, they want it for the votes. Number 3, you know what that one is. We don't have to talk about that one.
Wait, what?
But there can only be a very few reasons.
Wait, what is
Because
that?
they're destroying our country at a level that's never been seen before. Importantly, as part of this con job, it's a con job. None of the illegal aliens she is smuggling in through the ports or on the airplanes. Think of it. Big jet planes loaded up with migrants flying into the middle of our country and going to Iowa and lots of other states. They've all become border states. We only have border states now, but they're counted in the Border Patrol statistics. And when you do that, you can add a lot of numbers because they're not taking those counts. They want to have those counts not included in the numbers. In Aurora, Colorado, Springfield, Ohio, where it's been a mass invasion, these were 2 beautiful, successful towns, idyllic, and they're in trouble, big trouble. And very unfair. The people want to leave, they want to get out. But everyone's afraid to say, I want to get out because they want to be politically correct. And other towns just like them, hundreds of them all over America. Americans have watched their communities destroyed by this sudden, suffocating inundation of illegal aliens. It's an invasion. This influx has overwhelmed our schools. They're taking the seats of students that can no longer go there, and they don't even speak English. They're trying to fire a lot of people and hire interpreters. Can you believe that? They want to get rid of some people. They want to hire. Springfield is looking, the mayor said it the other day, looking for interpreters because nobody in all of the 32,000 people that took into the town, think of this. You have a town of 15,000 people, and almost instantly you have 32,000 people, in this case from Haiti. Most of them don't speak English, so they're looking for interpreters. You have to get them out. We have to save our country. You have to save these towns. They flooded the job market with low-wage migrants, but many cases migrants that also have horrible records, drug dealing, so many different things, a lot of human traffickers, and it's mostly human traffickers in women. Last month, American-born workers lost 1.3.
I just want to point something here.
Last month, you know, when they
He's talking about migrants that are processed through TPS, which means that they get their background checks. The application that he's talking about also is another part of this. And it's like literally Customs and Border Patrol processing these migrants. So therefore, everything he says about these people is wrong. One, they are legal migrants. He's complaining about legal migrants, saying he wants to deport legal migrants. That's number one.
In any other context. Hard to
Number two, he's lying and saying that they're actually and whatnot. They're not. They literally cannot have a background for them to be able to get that TPS clearance.
Before Hispanic also, they're suffering, and the families are suffering.
It also doesn't make any sense because they're stealing the jobs, but they're also somehow simultaneously still doing like drug dealing. Like they're both dealing drugs and also stealing the jobs.
Last month, think of that. And now we've gained out of that number 635,000 jobs, but every single one of them was an illegal migrant. They've also, as you know, and you've heard me talk about it, this happened very recently, we found out, 818,000 jobs were fraud. They fraudulently claimed that the economy picked up 818,000 more jobs than they stated. And a whistleblower or leaker let it be known that that was false, that the 818,000 jobs was a false fraud. It was a fraud. It should be investigated, by the way.
He's talking
But
about
Biden
ghost
knew
jobs.
about it, and Kamala knew about it. And they were going to release the real figures right after the election. But by putting 818,000 phony, fake, disgusting jobs that don't exist, by putting them on the rolls, it made them look much better a short while
Wait,
ago.
what? Never mind. I don't
They
know what
didn't
he's
quite
talking
make
about.
it to past election day. So to that whistleblower or leaker, I want to, on behalf of the American public, thank you very much. These people are a fraud. Just like nobody talks about it, but Kamala never had a job at McDonald's. Her resume talks about McDonald's. When I worked at the French fry counter, it was so tough, so hot. She didn't work there. She never worked at McDonald's. It was a lie. Most heartbreaking of all is Kamala's migrant invasion has brought massive into our country at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We've never seen levels like this. And during the debate, I mentioned
An unprecedented dropping is not wrong. We've never seen it before. The dropping by unprecedented
I
levels.
think we did great. But David Muir of ABC, fake news, when I said it was way up in our country, he corrected me. He corrected me on so much, and it was right what I said. He didn't correct her one time, and what she said was wrong. Absolutely wrong. So many different Charlottesville, she was wrong. All of the different things, almost everything she said, and she was never corrected. But he corrected me and he said, no, it's not gone up. I said, it's gone up massively. He said, I'd like to state for the record that has not gone up.
But it hasn't. It hasn't gone up. It's gone down.
See, that there will be no corrections of any kind. And the deal. Why? Because they're bad people and they're fake news. So he did it many times to me during the debate. The deal, that's the deal. Because you can take anything and
It's wild. It's
Try
wild
it.
that this is just like
Make up
a
stories.
prominent picture.
we had a deal where that wouldn't happen.
Where-
You could do whatever you wanted as soon as the debate was over, but he did it in total for
A
what I
prominent
believe it was.
fixture in the Republican arsenal of communications is basically just lying and lying and lying over and over again in the face of like abject truths.
The other
And just
one I never heard
like
of
back in the day, they at least used to try and say something. Like they would cherry pick data, or they would lie by omission. They would use like the normal ways in which you can lie, but then have some level of plausible deniability. Nowadays, they just openly are like, nah, they're eating cats and dogs. End is up. Shut the
are
fuck.
now illegal aliens. They've given you the fake stories that the illegals coming into the country are much better than our people. They don't commit. These are some of the worst anywhere in the world. And they don't just come from South America. They come from all over the world. The Congo in Africa. A lot of them coming from the Congo. The Middle East. Asian. They do come from South America, but not all. They're coming from all over the world, and they're emptying out their jails, and they're emptying out their mental institutions. The money they're saving is beyond belief, and what they're doing to our country. And if I were the president of one of those countries, I'd be doing the same thing. I'd say, let's empty out our jails into the United States. We're dumping ground for the rest of the world, and it's going to stop starting on January 20th. But the most important day in the history of our country is going to be November 5th, Election Day. 3 months ago in Queens, an illegal alien released into our country by Border Czar Harris approached two 13-year-old children with a machete in broad daylight, forced them into the woods, tied them together by the wrists, and the young girl hurt the girls very, very badly. They caught him because he put it on tape, he put it on film. They caught him. He thought it would be nice to have it on tape to show his friends. In June, 2 NYPD officers were at point-blank range by an illegal migrant from Venezuela. By the way, the rate in Venezuela is down to the lowest level it's ever been that they know of, because they've taken their street gangs, they've taken their off the streets, they've taken their drug dealers, and they've emptied their jails almost. They'll be emptied very soon, within the next 2 months. I guess they can't get enough buses, but they're bringing people at record levels to our country. And their rate is the lowest it's been ever that anybody can remember. Caracas has become a safe and wonderful city, unlike our cities that are getting
Bro's
worse and worse.
running for president of Venezuela, dude.
Horrible invasion that Kamala, in particular, because I'm no fan of Biden. He's been a terrible president, doesn't know what he's doing, and he proved that during the debate. But you know what? He assigned her the job, and whether you call her a border czar or just say that she was put in charge of the border, doesn't make any difference. Same thing. She's done a horrible job, and she'll be out there tomorrow standing probably in front of the wall that I built, trying to say what a wonderful job she did, and the fake news will believe her because that's what they want to do.
That's great, man. I love that.
I hope everybody out there understands that. The Border
I love
Patrol
that, as
custody
predicted,
was,
when Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party go right on immigration, obviously these assholes go even further right on immigration. Wonderful. All they do when they do this, when the Democrats do this, by the way, is normalize right-wing sentiment. If you don't address some of the insane lies that Donald Trump is telling a mile a fucking minute, all you have done in that process is normalize these lies, and you have people on your side of the political spectrum believe it. Wonderful stuff.
her by force with a metal pipe, and her again and again, over and over, and hurting her very badly. In Indiana this June, a woman was kidnapped by 2 illegal aliens, brought to a house, held down, and then forced into the back of a car while illegals drove around talking about how to her. Let's find out how to her. She threw herself out of the moving vehicle, was badly hurt, but escaped, and she said, "They didn't mean to me, they meant to me." That was her statement. Earlier this year, an illegal migrant from Haiti granted entry by Kamala and her horrible policies, and in particular her phone app, which nobody can even believe exists, and the people that deal with the phone app.
I think it's pretty wild that, like, there's a sum total of like 60 plus and total committed by undocumented migrants in this current fiscal year, and Trump has mentioned approximately half of them in the process of his remarks. Now, if the American government was not like actually actively targeting whoever does, right, local municipalities, police officers and whatnot, we're not actively targeting these people that are doing and then arresting them, you would maybe have an opportunity to say, what the hell's going on here? Okay? The issue, however, is that when you look at the actual reality, when you look at the actual data, and you find out that undocumented migrants are 4 times less likely to do property in comparison to natural-born U.S. citizens, or 2.5 times less likely to do any in comparison to natural-born U.S. citizens, you realize that hyper-focusing on undocumented migrants in this way is simply to just make it seem as though every undocumented migrant is out there mentally ill, an escapee from an insane asylum, walking around with a machete to go and mutilate people. That is what the actual problem here is, when that is the opposite of the reality. Okay? And if there is no one that will speak truth to this insanity, to these racial screeds that Donald Trump is routinely pumping, then more Americans are going to believe it.
Hasn't she done it? And why didn't she do it almost 4 years ago? All of these things she could have done 4 years ago. You will hear Kamala claim that the reason the border is not secure is that Congress has refused to pass her atrocious border bill. It's the worst bill you've ever seen. It would allow people to come in here at levels that would be incredible and would allow them to get citizenship.
The story he told us about Sherry Papini, who went to prison for making up the whole story. Wait, what? California woman who pleaded guilty to faking her own kidnapping and lying about it to the FBI was released from federal prison into community confinement. Online jail records show that she will be at a location overseen by residential reentry management. Papini was sentenced to 18 months in prison in September after pleading guilty to 2 counts of a 35-count indictment, admitting to mail fraud and lying to a law enforcement officer. The charges didn't stem from her faking her abduction, but rather the lies she continued to tell for years afterward. Papini crafted an elaborate lie telling authorities that 2 Hispanic women had abducted her. Her story began to unravel when investigators found male DNA on her clothing that led them to her ex-boyfriend, whom she had been staying with while she pretended to be missing. He dropped her off along Interstate 5 when she said she wanted to go back home.
They're trying to make it look better now, but the damage was done over the first 3 years. We're trying to do anything to make it look better because it doesn't poll very well for them, but it polls very well for me. I think I won the election in 2016 because of the border. I fixed the border. I couldn't even talk about the border. My people would say, sir, nobody's listening. You fixed it. Nobody cares in 2020. Then I got millions of more votes in 2020 than I got in 2016. The most votes of any sitting president in history by far.
Wait, what? No.
But I couldn't talk about the border because I fixed it.
Joe Biden got more
it was
votes,
great.
man. What the?
Now we can talk about the border.
That's such a, oh my God, every part of it is just so stupid. Like, his lies are not even good.
And by the way, 25 times worse and more deadly than the border in 2016. A good border by compared to this. But it would provide illegal
he's
bill,
a sitting president.
alien taxpayer-funded lawyers. Every illegal alien would have a taxpayer-funded lawyer.
But Joe Biden is the current sitting president.
And funnel millions of dollars of left-wing organizations, people, to come into our country. It would enable human trafficking. And by the way, she also wanted to have transgender operations for illegal migrants that were in detention. Now think of that. She also wanted, as you know, to defund the police. She wants to defund the police. She was one of the leaders in the defund the police movement. And that lasted for years. And anybody that wants to defund the police for one day should never have the right to be president of the United States. And she was one of the leaders in that movement. But think of that. She wants to give sex change operations to people in detention that came in illegally and are classified as illegal migrants. If they want a sex change operation, she said, that's okay, we'll do that. The only way to secure our border is to fire radical border czar.
I don't get it. This is one of those things where it's like, is this good or bad? Because if sex change operations are like evil and mutilating, then don't you want that to happen to the migrants? Like, don't you want to punish the migrants? So technically, Kamala Harris is like punishing the migrants harder than you by transing them? What happened? This only makes sense if you're like, they're giving migrants gender-affirming care, and I hate that because gender-affirming care is great, and our American citizens should be able to get it instead. You know? Like, which one is it? What's going on here? Like, I thought you hated these migrants.
Before being
and I thought you hated gender-affirming care, so Kamala Harris is just punishing them by transing them.
Is massively up in our country. It's very lucky the Department of Justice released numbers right after that debate. Somebody in there might like me. But they released numbers, giving the real numbers, and the numbers were unbelievably, shockingly high, the highest ever. And I haven't gotten an apology. I want an apology from ABC. She supports free taxpayer-funded health care for illegal aliens, and even, as I said, some of the horrible things that she's willing to do, including the sex change operations for people in detention. She called for abolishing immigration, detention centers. She wants to have detention centers, but detention centers that you can get out of. Remember when in 2014 Obama built cages and the fake news tried to say I built them. Fortunately, we had a great American that said, no, these were built during the Obama administration, and Biden knew about it, but I don't think Biden knows too much. And we have one other thing
Once again, doesn't
that
make
she's
sense.
called. She's called the grandmother
pro-children
of sanctuary cities. I'm going to terminate all sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for, and you know, you can go to California where she ruined San Francisco. She destroyed. San Francisco may have been the greatest
San
city in the
Francisco's still
world
there.
16, 18 years ago. And now it's a practically unlivable place. And I hate to say that I
It's
have
dog
property
shit.
in San Francisco. It's not a good thing to say, but this far supersedes my ownership of property. It's an unlivable place. It was the best city. Bob Tisch of Lowe's, friend of mine, great guy, wonderful man. He was in San Francisco. He was in Chicago. He had big businesses all over the Tisch family. Bob Tisch used to tell me that he thinks San Francisco is the greatest city in the country. Passed away quite a while ago, and San Francisco probably was, and now it's not even livable. She destroyed it when she was the DA, and she destroyed the state of California along with Gavin Newsom. She destroyed the state of California when she was the AG. If you can't say the phrase illegal alien, she said, then we can't trust you to secure the border. She said, you're not allowed to say the phrase under any circumstance illegal alien, but that's what they are. And it's that simple. She didn't want you to use that term. If you used that term, you'd be fired. And by the way, she fired everybody in a row. She couldn't get along with anybody. You know, it's interesting. 5 months ago, she was considered the worst vice president in history. She was laughed at, scoffed at for 3 years. She was the worst. Her staff hated her beyond belief. They were quitting. She had almost nobody wanted to work there. She couldn't get people to work for her. And she was just considered as bad as it gets. And she wasn't going to be chosen. No way that she was going to be chosen to replace Joe Biden. We had the debate. After the debate, they said, oh, this guy, we got to change him. I think we were up 21 points. But they went in there, and everyone knows they threatened the 25th Amendment. They threatened him with the 25th Amendment. They said, Joe, you're going to get out. And Nancy Pelosi led the charge. And Nancy Pelosi has a little problem because her husband sold their Visa stock. They had a lot of Visa stock one day before Visa was announced that Visa is being sued by the Department of Justice. Think of that. Nancy Pelosi sold vast amounts of Visa stock one day before the big lawsuit that we all read about a few days ago was brought against Visa. You think it was luck? I don't think. She should be prosecuted. Nancy Pelosi should be prosecuted for that.
I mean, he's right.
Also be prosecuted.
I hate to give up like this, memes like this, her flowers, but he's right.
Number she wanted, soldiers or National Guard. And I hope you all read John Solomon and what John Solomon wrote 2 days ago, because if you read it, you'd see that Donald Trump did absolutely nothing wrong. It's a scam. It's a scam. On day one of my new administration, I will stop all migrant flights immediately. They should stop them tonight. She can do that. Just sign one little page saying stop the migrant flights. But she won't do that. They're infecting our country. They're destroying our country. I will shut down all entries through the migrant phone app, something that most of you haven't even heard of, but it's very active and taking in thousands and thousands of people a week. I will end catch and release, and I will remain in Mexico. I'm going to tell Mexico, thank you very much. You're putting it back right away. You're putting it back, and they will do it too when I tell them. I will bring back Title 42. I will send a federal law enforcement large group
Nothing
of people
funnier than Trump talking about Venezuelan migrants
liberate Aurora,
when he is directly responsible both on the processing side for offering TPS, including but not limited to extending TPS to Venezuelan migrants on his way out, but also responsible for the horrifying conditions in Venezuela by greatly accelerating the sanctions regime against the Venezuelan government and the Venezuelan economy in an effort to, absolutely destroy that country. And of course, people saw that there was TPS to be had in the United States of America, so they came here. The app real? Yes, it is. It's a good thing. The application, the only criticism I have for the immigrant application is that it's not good enough. What do you mean? It's a part of legal migration, chat. These are people that are, like the Customs and Border Patrol basically created a process in which instead of filing paperwork, you just file an application. It's the same process. It's just more streamlined. It's a government application. Anyway.
To pour across our border. This will be much larger than that, but we will get rid of the drug dealers. We will get rid of the human traffickers. We will get rid of the people that came out of jails and the people that came out of mental institutions. They will all be gone, and it'll happen very quickly.
It's such an insane thing to complain about. Like, you're literally complaining that we have found a method to faster process undocumented migrants and offer them documentation. Because never forget, the difference between an undocumented migrant and a documented migrant, like a legal immigrant versus an illegal immigrant, is paperwork. He's mad that there's paperwork.
Anything she says tomorrow, you know, is a fraud, because she was the worst in history at protecting our country. So she'll try and make herself look a little bit better, but it's not possible. Normally, I would save this speech till after she leaves, but there's not a thing she can say to make it change. As you know, President Zelensky has asked to meet with me, and I will be meeting with him tomorrow morning at around 9:45 in Trump Tower, and it's a shame.